Okay, welcome to this module. This is the Employee Toolkit module, and in this module, we'll be looking at everything a job seeker needs and must have, right? What every job seeker must have, what you must have as an applicant, to secure a job, and even what you need, basic tools that you must have in your arsenal, in your toolbox to thrive at the place of work. So you're welcome to this module, and we'll dive right in. Alright, the objectives of this modules, by the end of this module, you should be able to identify key documents and digital assets you need to apply for jobs, right? Things like your CVs, your portfolios, and all of that. You would also be able to understand how to effectively present them, to employers, right? So that you can secure that job, even, after your service here or even during your service here. You would also be able to build, a complete professional looking portfolio, so there are some things that makes it professional, right? We'll be looking at those things today. So identify key documents and digital assets you need to apply for jobs. Understand how to effectively present yourself to employers, and also build a complete professional job seeking portfolio. So some component of the employee's toolkit, right? The first thing is your personal branding essentials. We'll be looking at each of this, right? And then there's a bonus at the end, right? So we'll be looking at your personal branding experience or essentials, right? We'll also look at your professional documents, this like your CV, your resumes, and all of that. We'll also look at your digital readiness, right? So that if you are called on, for a position and you are required to share your portfolio or something, you have it ready. And the next we'll be looking at is job search strategy, how to secure jobs, how to look for jobs, how to search for jobs. And then the next is application skills, how to apply for these jobs. And then interview readiness, how to get prepared for interviews. And then professional etiquette. And lastly, we look at AI skills and tools that are needed to help you, present yourself professionally and also thrive in the place of work. So these are the 8 elements we're going to be going through, and we're going to break them into, videos in themselves because there are quite a lot of them. So we'll quickly dive in. So the first is your professional branding essentials. Right? This is talking about building a professional identity online and offline that positively represents you to your employers. Right? Building a professional identity online and offline that positively represents you to your employers. Right? We always say that your CV, social media, the first port of call, even before your employer gets to see you, right? So you must be able to build a professional identity online and offline that positively represents you. All right, quickly, let's go into the first one. The first thing you must have is a professional email address. Now, I know that we are core members and we recent graduates and all of that. I know that we have quite, a number of ideas when it comes to having a professional email address, right? But your email address should be clean, simple, in a simple format as firstname.lastname@gmail.com, right? You need to avoid any informal, unprofessional names. For example, cuteboy95, right? Fine girl, fine girl 24. All of these, email addresses that you've had before now, you need to do them and get professional looking email addresses that carries your first name, your last name @gmail.com, right? So for example, david.mark@gmail.com, right? So things like that. You don't need to have your nicknames and all of that. Those are unprofessionals. The next thing you must ensure you do is to check your email addresses, to check your emails frequently. And this is something that, most core members are not used to, right? You miss out on a lot of opportunities when you don't check your emails frequently, right? You want to do that. Check your emails frequently, every day. In fact, you want to turn on your notifications so that any notification that comes in, as soon as an email comes in, you've gotten, a head start on that information, right? So your emails, your email address, and consistently and frequently check your email addresses. The next is to set up a LinkedIn profile, right? And if we're talking about corporate professionals, the best and the first social media profile you talk about is LinkedIn, right? So you want to have a LinkedIn profile. Set up your LinkedIn profile. If you do not have one, this is the time to create your LinkedIn profile, right? In the Growth Hub, we have sessions on, creating a LinkedIn profile and making it professional, right? So, but the things you want to note with your LinkedIn profile is have a professional picture. Don't just post, a random picture of yourself laying down, sitting down, smiling, childishly, and all of that. You want to have, a professional looking picture, right? Go ahead and get a headshot if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, dress corporately and take a professional picture, right? Looking good, and upload it there. You want to have a professional picture in your LinkedIn page, right? You want to have a professional picture in your LinkedIn page, right? You don't want to have an unprofessional experience, right? You don't want to give people, the look that you are not a professional, right? So I always emphasize this: have a professional looking picture or photo in your LinkedIn profile. The second thing you want to do is to have a compelling headline, right? That goes straight to the point and tells people what you do and who you are, right? So, for example, I'm an aspiring project manager, I'm a virtual assistant, I'm open to work, I'm into leadership, I'm into graphic design, just have a compelling headline, short, straight to the point, and tell people what you do. The other thing you want to have is a summarized experience, right? You want to summarize your experiences, your values, your career goals in your LinkedIn profile. Because every serious professionals, right, when they want to recruit, they go and check your LinkedIn profile. So it's important that you optimize, you set up and optimize your LinkedIn profile. You also want to include relevant, certifications and accomplishments you've gotten, right? So from your university, any other extra curricular certifications you had, or any other, vocational certifications you have, or any other skill certifications you had, you can put that there. It boosts your credibility, right? And also any other accomplishment you've had, any awards and all of that, you also want to put them there because they are important. They tell a lot about you, and they tell a lot about what you can do and what you can achieve for the organization. Also, you want to also engage with posts and connect with professionals, right? We live in a world of interconnectedness. You want to engage with other people's posts. You want to first create your own post, right, on your LinkedIn page and be as frequent as possible, right? But don't just stop there. Connect with other people, right? Engage with them, comment on their, their posts and all of that, right? That is how to optimize your LinkedIn, right? This is just a very short, LinkedIn optimization class. But you want to do these things. They are very important if you are going to thrive, secure that job, and you're going to thrive in a place of work. And the next thing is your social media readiness. I know we've talked about LinkedIn, but now let's talk about other social media, profiles, platforms. Like Instagram, Twitter, and all of that. You want to make sure you clean up anything that is not appropriate. Anything you've posted in the past, in your school days, in your earlier days, anything you've posted in your social media account, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and all of that, that is not appropriate, right? You want to go ahead and remove those things because they would speak against you, right? In the eyes of your potential employers, right? So employers may check your social media, right? So you have to clean up inappropriate posts, right? So use platforms to showcase yourself as a thought leader, right? Use Twitter, use LinkedIn, use your Instagram, right? And all of that. Present yourself as someone who, would be an asset to the organization, not somebody who would come and, disrupt and destroy things that are happening in the organization, right? So the next thing we're looking at here is your professional document, right? And this, we're going to be looking at your CV. So when we talk about professional documents, we're talking about preparing key job application documents, right? Like your CV, your cover letter, your certificate, your portfolios, to showcase your qualifications, right? You want to go ahead and get your certifications from school. You want to get your, statement of results. If you need to get your NYSC certifications, your CV, every document and everything you need, right? You need to get them ready. So think about them. What documents do I need? You don't just want to start preparing them when you get the opportunity. You want to prepare them beforehand and keep them, right? So preparing this key job application document is what we're talking about in professional documents. So the first we'll look at your CV and your resume. You want to tailor your job, you want to tailor your CV and your resume to the job you are applying for, right? I've seen a lot of CVs and some resumes that are not tailored to the job, right? So you want to edit your CV to the particular job or role you are applying for, right? So it's important that you do that. So tailor, your CV to the job role that you're applying for. You have to clearly structure your CV, without typos. I see a lot of people, when they submit their CVs, there are a lot of typos, lots of errors, and all of that. You want to make sure that you check through your entire CV, your entire resume, to ensure that the information you gave is correct, and also there are no typos, there are not errors, because these things speaks about you, right? You want to portray yourself as somebody who is attentive to details, right? And not just somebody who rushes through the entire process just because you want to submit. It also tells about your time management skills, tells about your leadership skills, your personal leadership skills, your effectiveness, and all of that. So like I said, your first impression your employers get is your CV. So you want to make sure you clearly structure your CV without any typos. The next thing is to include a personal summary, right? And I'm sure that a number of us would have known what a CV is, right? But it's good to just re-emphasize these things. Include a personal summary, your skills section, work experience, education, achievement, and all of that. And ideally, it should be a maximum of 1 to 2 pages, right? Your CV should not be 5, 10, 15 pages. It's not really important. At the maximum, 3 pages. So 1 page is okay. 2 pages is quite something. But then if you have to go beyond that, it shouldn't be more than 2.5, 3 pages. But ideally, 1 to 2 pages is all you need for your CV. I think we'll still dive more into CV so that we can go into the details. So let's look at some best practices, right, to create your professional CV. There's some best practices, right? So there's no one size fits all, but there's some best practices that you can look at, right? The first thing you notice here is that your CV is your first impression. I've said that multiple times, that your CV is your first impression. Before they get to meet you, to speak to you, they encounter your CV and they judge you and they decide who you are by your CV. So your CV is a professionally written, a professionally written CV increases your chances of landing interviews and standing out in a competitive job market, right? So a professionally written CV increases your chances of landing interviews and standing out in a competitive job market. So we cannot overemphasize the importance of having a professionally written CV, right? All right. So let's look at some key elements of a professional CV. We've touched on a few of these, but I'll just emphasize them. Right. The first thing is your header. At the header, you want to have your full name. You can either make it bold, centered, aligned, left, or whatever you want to do, or have your professional name. Do not put your nickname there. Do not put your nicknames and all of those unprofessional names you're called. Put your full name, your first name, last name, and if you have other names, you can put them there, right? You also want to put your professional email address. Remember, we talked about your email address that contains your first name dot your last name, either at gmail.com, an Outlook, or whatever platform you use to create your email address, but let it be professional. You also want to have your phone number, right? Because they will want to reach you. They can also reach you through your email address, or they can choose to call you. So you need to have your phone number there. The next thing you want to have is your LinkedIn profile. It's usually recommended, right? It stands you out. If you can put your LinkedIn there and they can check you out, it will stand you out from the crowd, right? And also you want to put your location, right? Just put your city, your state. You don't need to put your full address, right? If they request for it, then you can tell them. So just put your city or your state, right? Another element in your professional summary, in your CV, is your professional summary. Another element in your CV is your professional summary. This should be just a brief 2-line overview of your background, right? Your career goals, what you bring to the table, and all of that, right? 2-3 lines overview of your background, what you've done in the past, right? For example, I graduated with a degree in economics and a passion for data analysis, skilled in Excel and Power BI, with a hands-on experience of project coordination and client communication, right? Just a 2-3 line overview of your background, what you've done. You don't need to put everything, but you capture, details that are important, that, your employer should quickly notice about you, that should stand you out, right? So this is a good example. You can also check other CVs around. Somewhere in this module, we're going to add a copy of a sample CV that you can look at, right? So you want to have your professional summary as well. Quickly, the next element you want to have are your key skills. What are the skills you have? What are the skills you are bringing? What are those valuable skills that you're bringing? And this one should be written as bullet lines, right? Like I said, we'll drop a sample CV, right? So, for example, you have Microsoft skills, you have digital marketing skills, you have research skills, teamwork, communication, problem solving, graphic design, whatever skill you have, geography, you want to highlight them, right? According to their order of priority, which ones are more important, you highlight them, right? You list them. They can be 4, 5, 6, they can be 10, but do not just add multiple skills that are not relevant to the job you are applying for, right? So, list out all the relevant technical and soft skills that you have, right? Remember, we talked about soft skills, we talked about technical skills, right? So, list them out as you build your CV. The next thing we look at is, your experience, right? Either your work experience or your volunteer experience. You want to highlight these two, right? Your work experience or your volunteer experiences. You want to highlight them, right? So what organization did you work? What were the dates? What was your role, right? You need to put them in bullet points, right? You need to highlight all of this. What organization you worked in? What were the dates? What was your role in that organization, right? And you also need to use action words, right? For example, I led, I managed, I developed, I coordinated, I created, I achieved. You get, right? So you need to use those kinds of words because it tells a lot about what you can do by what you did, right? I led, I managed, I developed, I coordinated, I created, I achieved. And you also need to give data of your impact, at your previous experience, right? So I led the organization to achieve, for example, 30% increase in their revenue in 2 years. I did this, I did that. You need to put data, right, so that they can be wowed, they can be impressed. Okay, this person did this. I converted their accounting system from, manual to automated systems. I was able to achieve this and that. So you need to give data of your impact. We quickly move to the next element, which is your education, right? Your educational qualification, like your degree, what institution you went to, and what year you went to that institution. And by all means, do not fabricate anything, because if it is found, that is a fraudulent activity, right? So make sure that the dates are coherent. Make sure it is consistent, right? Do not fabricate anything, like I said. If you have any honors award, if you have TCs, like those go into actual professional settings, academic settings. You want to also add your honors, your theses, and any other relevant work that applies to job role you are applying for, right? So make sure that your academic data, your academic experience is coherent, and you have not fabricated anything. Again, do not fabricate anything. This is very important, right? So we move on to the next. You also have your certifications. Like I said before, any certifications you've taken, you want to put them in your CV because they help to boost your credibility, right? If you've taken any Udemy course, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, digital skills, and all of that, you want to put them there. You also want to add, if you have, and if it is important, any project portfolio, the links to portfolios that you have. Now, this is part of your digital asset that we talked about, right? Just you can just add a short description of the major projects, right, that you've worked on. Just a short description of the major project you've worked on. You can include links, like I said, so that your employer can go and see, even before they get to start asking you questions. They've seen, what you have done and what you can do, right? So I think you can move on. And then the last thing in your professional CV would be your referees, right? And this is optional, right? And also, what most people do is to say that your referees are available on request, right? Or you can include one or two of them if you want to, or you can just say that they are available upon request. Now, so if your employer says, okay, I want to get to meet someone who can vouch for the things you've said in this CV, then you can go ahead to, make them available, right? So you need to add a section for referees. And also, if you choose to provide them, provide one or two, or if you choose not to, you can just say they will be available upon request. All right, so lastly, just a summary of everything we've talked about. So use a clean layout, no fancy colors, no fancy text, and all of those things. We see a lot of fancy CV templates and all of that. Except if maybe you're going for a creative work. In most cases, those fancy colors, fancy fonts, fancy text do not necessarily add anything significant to your application, right? So you want to keep it clean and clear, right? Make it 1 or 2 pages maximum, like we said. We should tailor your CV to the particular job you're applying for. Very important. Tailor your CV to the particular job you're applying for. Avoid spelling and grammatical errors, right? You want to also save your CV in PDF format, right? Save it in PDF format. Submit it in PDF format, except you are told otherwise, right? If you're told to submit it in another format, then that's fine. But ideally, you should send your CV to them in a PDF format, right? And also, you want to name your CV file, right? To carry your first name, your last name, so that it's easier to sort, right? It's easier to know whose CV this is without even getting to open it, right? So these are tips and tools that you must have, right? I think this should be right. Also, so let's quickly talk about your cover letter before we wrap up this video, right? And your cover letter, you want to express interest, right? Your cover letter is more of a personal interaction with your hiring manager, right? You want to make the conversation more personal, talking about yourself. Express your interest in getting the role, right? Show your understanding of the role, show your understanding of the organization, show your understanding of the role in your cover letter. You also want to demonstrate value and relevant experience, right? But like I said, you are addressing the recruiter or the hiring manager in a personal way, in a more personal way than your CV. So your CV comes in more formal, more structured in a formal setting, but your cover letter is more of a personal expression, of yourself and your experience, right? would also attach a copy of cover letter so you can take advantage of that. Like we've talked about this already, your CVs, your transcripts, all of that, you want to get them ready and have them ready, right? You do not want to be called for them and then you start looking for them. You need to have all these documents ready beforehand. Like I said, also portfolios, if you're a creative developer, if you're a creative, you're a developer, you're a writer, all of that, you want to have links to your portfolio. It's very important. Have links to your portfolio. They demonstrate proof of skills and results, right? Demonstrate that you've done this thing before and they demonstrate results, right? So you want to have them. You can have links. You can have, if you are a developer, you can have your GitHub repository. And then if you are just a extra guy, you can have them in PDF, right? If you have a creative work, have them in PDF that you can send, to anyone as soon as it is requested, right? As soon as it is requested. All right, we'll continue in the next video. Thank you for watching.